another story that takes place here in the construction, and that is the human story, what it was like to work under those terrible conditions inside a mountain, water dripping through, the sound of jackhammers going all the time, and the explosions that took place when the rock was being blasted. Not all of them happened as planned. Sometimes the nitroglycerin, being an unstable compound, would go off without provocation, injuring or killing the workers.
Over the years, the stories of these gruesome and untimely deaths spread. Many still believe the tunnel is haunted by these souls lost in the bloody pit. While many of these ghost sightings can be explained away as misidentified objects, the warning light on the back of a train, reflections of dust or moisture in the air, or fog and smoke coming out from the tunnel, other cases aren't so easily debunked. Especially when coming from a credible source, such as a track walker, whose job it is to walk the tunnel, inspecting and understanding every aspect of it.
In the early 1970s, around 1973 or 4, I met the track walker up at Hoosac one snowy early winter afternoon. And in the course of the conversation, I asked him, had he ever seen any ghosts? And I frankly expected to be told no. He said, well, I've never seen any ghosts, but I did have an experience several years ago that to this day I can't figure out. Oh, yes. I had walked through the tunnel from the west end to the east end, ate my lunch in the little building there, and as I usually do, turned around and started to walk back. At about 2/3 of the way through the tunnel, I saw coming towards me a lamp in the shadowy shape of somebody holding it. This was not unusual. I would find either hunters or folks who were just curious and started to walk in not realizing how long the tunnel was, and when they approached me, I'd just shoo them around and shoo them out. In the course of due time, this lamp turned and did briefly illuminate two forms, and I figured they were on their way back out ahead of me, not wanting to confront me. Except when I got to the west portal, there were no other footprints. We'd had a light snowfall, just a dusting, and my tracks were visible. There were no other tracks visible. Did these couple of kids maybe go up in the frame for the storm door? So I climbed up and looked up there. No, there was nothing up there. I was now very curious because there was nothing but my set of tracks into the tunnel on the new fallen snow, that I even went and walked all the way up and around around the back of the tunnel facade to see if they had happened to come in that way and go down through the steelwork. To this day, I have no idea who they were or what they were. I know I saw the light. I know I saw the legs as these folks or this apparition turned to leave. But I also know I never was able to find any footprints in the snow. So it's a mystery.
The human toll on this project was quite high. The statistic that has always gone along with this is that there were 195, or sometimes you see the number 198 killed in the construction. I and others have searched through the records trying to identify them, and to date, with the composite of what we have researched, we can only identify 75. Why the number is so low compared to those supposed to have been killed is still a mystery.
Were numbers added to deter legislature from continuing the tunnel? Were those who got injured and could no longer work counted as dead? Or did the records of those deaths simply disappear over the years? Whether or not one believes in the supernatural, most would agree that this tunnel has had more than its fair share of tragic endings and unsolved cases. After its opening, Hoosac saw 50 or more trains a day. With each train being led by a steam engine, smoke became an issue.
Because there was so much smoke and exhaust fumes in the tunnel, in 1899 the railroad, this was still a Fitchburg, put in a steam-powered fan up at the top of the central shaft with big wooden blades to try to move the air up and out of the tunnel.
Even that was overwhelmed. And for a time period from 1911 until 1946, with the advent of the diesel locomotive, electric engines were used to haul the steam locomotives through the tunnel. And the fires were banked in the steam locomotives so as to produce little pollution inside there.
They found that after the tunnel was completed and they were running steam engines through it, there was not enough ventilation out the central shaft to clear the fumes from the steam engines, and it was seriously affecting the engineer, the fireman, and any passengers that might have been on a passenger train.
There was a crew of 5 or 6 or 7 men that had to work in the tunnel, 6 days a week, 48 hours a week in that smoke. So by the 1890s, the tunnel was just one big smoke hole. Well, first they tried compounding. Compounding is using steam twice, and it's more efficient, but it really didn't cut down on the smoke very much. So then they went with oil burners, and that actually made the problem worse. They found out that the oil smoke was not so visible, but it was even more toxic.
At this point in time, the Boston and Maine had been purchased by the New Haven Railroad. Charles Sanger Mellon, the current president of the New Haven, had his own idea on how to cut back on the smoke situation.
He decided to electrify the tunnel and use electric engines like they were using from Connecticut into New York City to pull the trains through the tunnel so that they wouldn't have to run the steam engines.
At that time, the New Haven used the same technology, and they electrified the tunnel to run with electric motors in 1911. And they used some of their same locomotives that they designed for their own operations in Connecticut and New York to run through the tunnel.
They built a power generating plant in Xylanite, and the power plant was to generate electricity for the tunnel and also for the Berkshire Street Railway Company. It didn't have enough capacity to satisfactorily supply the power for both the tunnel and the street railway. So the New England Power Company built a power station about 3 miles north of the tunnel called number 5. And that power station initially did not generate power, but it took power from a 66,000 kV line that had been run from Vernon, Vermont, through Shelburne Falls to number 5. And at number 5, with frequency converters, they changed the power from 66,000 volt 60 cycle to 11,000 volt 25 cycle, and then brought the power down along the river about 3 miles to the east portal of the tunnel into a switch house and used it to electrify the tunnel. And they did that until 1915, when they put in generating capacity or capability into number 5. Then they were able to generate the power and not just convert it from another source.
The electric locomotives hauled the steam trains through. They banked the fire on the steam locomotives, and the electric locomotives just tied on and pulled the trains through the tunnel. And that worked very well indeed until the diesels came along.
And they continued to do that until 1946, when the railroad started using all diesels.
After diesels were on the scene, the wire towers were abandoned or torn down. The transformers were taken from the converter houses, which were left to rot. From the tunnel's opening to trains in 1875, many passenger trains made their way into the dark bore. While still open for freight, in 1958 the last regularly scheduled passenger train entered Hoosac Tunnel. To look at it now, no one would understand all that went into the Great Bore. So many lives affected, so many burdens, and the ultimate success. In the years since the tunnel opened, it has seen numerous changes. The addition of a storm door on the west portal in 1954, the double track being taken out for a single line in 1957, and the bore being enlarged to allow bigger trains in 1997, to name a few. The Hoosac has also switched ownership numerous times and is currently co-owned by Pan Am and Norfolk Southern Railways. And while the tunnel is a unique and interesting place to visit, especially when a train runs through, please do remember that it is private property and no one should enter the tunnel. In addition to standard freight and coal trains, the tunnel also sees numerous truck trains, some of which are upwards of 2 miles long. To put this in perspective, for every one of these trains through the tunnel, there are roughly 200 less trucks on the Massachusetts Turnpike. In closing, it was the hope of this filmmaker that this documentary would enlighten you in some way and increase your knowledge and interest in the history and future of the Hoosac Tunnel.